Good evening, my friends. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about donkey training. This is a continuation of the training of Missy, and I'll tell you about today, which was a good day. And I'll catch up a little on things that I haven't taken videos of. She's nervous about the tripod, and she's nervous when I talk to the tripod. She likes to have my undivided attention. And I think that actually Abraham probably would have been trained better if I'd videoed it a little less because, of course, I don't know. They're very, very different individuals. Hang on a second. I'm going to do a little arranging here. I'm doing this with a selfie stick tonight instead of with a tripod. See if it works. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if you'll like it. I don't know if anybody will like it. Maybe we'll all feel like we're drunk and crazy. Anyway, so a lot of what I do with her, I don't video because I don't want to have the interruption in my mental connection to her. Working with animals is the way I do it. Is not about getting them to do what you demand that they do. Although sometimes I do have to demand that Abraham do something, but overall, I prefer to I work with one of these donkeys like you might take your dog on a walk, and talk to it, or if you're a hunter, you might take your dog out and say birds or whatever your command is, good dog and a few treats. And I mean, but in my way of thinking, it takes. Hang on a minute. Well, that was nothing. She was feeding Bandit. Okay. And so what I've been doing with her has worked better when I haven't videoed it until we're good at it. Excuse me. So I've had her hooked to the cart 5 times total. The first time, this is all, the stuff like the feeding training and all that, that's really important. That is actually the foundation. You do all that, and by the time that you can go up there, and they walk up to you and they stick their face in the halter, or maybe they turn it away, 2 degrees, and you say, hey, quit that, or, But it's like that. And they come up to you, like your dogs come up to you when it's supper time, and you tie everybody up and you feed them. Right now I'm feeding him oats. Abe's got so skinny, I'm really worried about him. And I had his teeth floated, and I'm feeding him oats because oats are kind of magical food. They're fairly complex carbohydrate that doesn't turn into sugar very fast, and that's why the humans can eat them without having as much diabetic and heart trouble, and it works with them too. And plus, if you don't get the ones that are fancy made more digestible, they're not too digestible. So that, but it gives him some extra energy. Calories is just a measure of energy, just like BTUs, and it gives him some extra energy. So since he's got to have it, everybody gets it because that's life. He just gets more. Nobody else knows that. So right now I'm tying them up, and everybody gets some oats in their bucket, and then I go get the hay, and I put the hay where they eat. Probably leave them at least during the day. I probably leave them tied half a day. I tie them up and put oats or put food at their feet, and just leave them tied up. It's work. That's work just as sure as going out and pulling a cart is. They learn that they pretty much do what you ask them to do, and you don't make a big deal out of it. But on the other hand, it helps if you make it so they can't disobey. You just stack the cards 100% on your side, and then you just you don't have to be rude. Just here, step over. But anyway, by the time you get them to where you can go up there and you can say, here, scoot over and poke one in the shoulder, and they'll move over, and you can say, here, step up and push them on the button, they'll step up. Well, I mean, these are the commands you're going to use to work them. Okay, so by the time, like all I've done with these new girls is fed them, brushed them, talked to them, messed with them, and in the process of doing that, I demand obedience, and I demand it in such a gentle way they can't tell. They have to get caught because that we do that first. And then after we do that, then we get our food, and so now we get caught and we get tied up, and we get our food in our own place, and we get to stand there, and we stand half a day. But when I first started training Abraham, if he had to stand 10 minutes, he'd paw a hole in the ground. He still paws some, but he was 16 years old when I first started training him. He had a hard go. He was a pasture pet. That's the worst thing you can do to a donkey. They need to be worked. They like to be worked. So now they do all that. So now I'm using Miss Kitty, on the cart, and today was the 5th day. The first day, I took her, I caught her up, put her halter on her, let her out, tied her to. I closed all the gates in the barnyard. So, worst thing goes wrong, she explodes and gets away from me, and she can only run around in circles. And I just stand there in the middle, and when she stops, I say, "Whoa," And but that didn't happen. It hasn't happened with her. She's been very good. And so the first time I tied her up to a closed gate, and I pulled the cart up to her, and I hung it on her harness so that the weight of the shafts was borne by her back, and the thing was all there around her. And I did that, and I walked all the way around her, from one side to the other a couple of times, and unhooked it and put her back on the ground, pushed it away, and told her she was a good girl, put her up. And so that's step one, the way I do it, of cart training. Just put it on them, take it back off. One of the things you're looking for, always, the objective, is to have a beginning, a middle, and an end where nothing goes wrong. The most important thing is that nothing goes wrong, and the second most important thing is that they learn some tiny little new thing at the same time. Okay, so you want a middle and a beginning and an end. So you catch her and tie her up to a different place than she's ever been tied before. Okay, that's a beginning. And take the cart over and roll it up to her. Now, she has seen the cart. She's been tied to the cart while Abe pulls it. She knows what it is. She sees him work it all the time. He's pulled the cart within 2 or 3 feet of her when she's loose in the barnyard. So this is all nothing new here. We don't want to surprise them. We want everything just to be like, this is just like yesterday, only there's one different thing that we didn't used to do. So, so I put her up that day and told her she was a good girl, brushed her and praised her and that all stuff. I mean, they get treats, they get praise. They always get a good meal, morning and night. That's my job. They don't have to work for that, except to get tied up and to be courteous and to come up, and they do have to work for it, but they don't have to do anything special. That goes with living here, and and they have to be brushed, and they have to be fly sprayed, and they have to be looked after. That goes with living here, and that goes with work stock, and they are pretty much an everyday obligation, the way I live. And so she got all those things. The second day that I hooked her up, I tied her in the same spot to the same gate. I put the cart on her in the same way. And I hooked everything up, and then I just untied her rope, and I backed her up from where she was a step or two, and I pushed the cart weight back with my hips. And we walked around one circle in the barnyard, back to the same spot, tied her back up, told her she's a good girl, put the cart away. Okay. Third day, I took the cart and her, and I did exactly what we did the second day, only as we began to walk around the barnyard, I had that gate over there open. And we walked out through it, and we walked out onto the farm. I don't know how far, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, I don't know, not real far. But out of the barnyard and across the lane and out into what is a working field here, the hayfield. Um, and in fact, it's in the middle of haying right now. So, we went out there and I stopped and we took another step and she got pretty nervous and she decided maybe she thought she'd run away. Um, when you hold a donkey you're training on a lead rope, you don't want to hold up close. That's later. When they get good at all their work, you can just reach under their chin and put a finger on the lead rope and guide them with it. Um, but when you're first training them, you want to have a hold of the long end of the lead rope, and you might want to have one hand on the rope up close to them to guide their head. But your main point of control is out here on the long end at the stop knot. And if they try to run, if you can get out far enough beside them, beside their head, then when you stand still, that turns their head and they have to run in a circle. If they get going straight away from you, if you're standing directly behind a donkey who's running away and she's serious about running away, don't plan to stop her. Let her go. She'll come home. It's okay. Because they're a lot stronger than you are. And the best thing you can hope for if you try to stop one who's got a straight run on you and is running away is really sore hands. From there it goes up to, like broken shoulders and stuff. You can't stop one. So if they decide to run, that's cool. They'll come home. This is all part of the deal. You want to avoid it. That means that was not a good day. That was an explosion. They happen. But you have to be realistic about it. You're not as big as they are. But if they only 3/4 want to run, and you're off to the side of them, and they feel that thing turn their head, they think, well, maybe I'll just run. I can run that, and pretty soon they're running in a circle around you, and you just let them do that till they run out of steam. It's no big deal. They're going to run out of steam. This is boring. So usually Abe is harder to train because I started him so old. And usually about 2 or 3 rounds. And he was like, oh man, this ain't working. And so he stopped. And we go on with whatever we were doing. When they stop, you reward them for that immediately. You tell them they're a good donkey. Because some people think the last thing they did was run away, but that's not true. The last thing they did was stop. You don't tell them they're a good donkey while they're running away. You just tolerate it and hang on if you can. And when they stop, you tell them they're a good donkey. Because that was a good thing. They just stopped. And so we got down there in the pasture, and she thought she might want to run. There was a mulberry tree there, and so I just kind of walked sideways around the tree. So I was walking in about a 12-foot diameter circle, and she was out on the end of a 10-foot lead rope, so she was running a 22-foot diameter circle, so she had to run a lot farther than I did. It's a good thing because she's faster. We made a round and a half around the tree, and she stopped, and we just went on back over to what we were doing. We looked at whatever we were looking at, and we turned around and went back. She was a little nervous. They hump their backs up when they're nervous, and she was a little humpbacked, and she wasn't real thrilled with this, but it was okay, and that's all you got to have. If you, like I said, beginning, middle, and end, and no explosions. A little running in circles, that's not an explosion. That's just, that nervousness. And so, then the next time that I put her on the cart, I got hummingbirds outside my window, my doorway there, so that's what I'm looking at. The next time that I put her on the cart was yesterday, and I had a bunch of stakes. Everybody, I planted all these chestnuts out there and over there, and the ones over there prospered, and the ones out here didn't, and that's acceptable. I'm not here to fight with the land. I saw what it did. I got 2 chestnuts out there, and I got 10 right over here in a nursery bed that I can put out there if I want. And but I had a bunch of stakes where things didn't come up, and I decided to pull up those stakes. So I harnessed her up. We're talking a load of stakes that I could carry in my arms. Okay, this is not a big deal, except that I don't want to have to carry them in my arms. That's a hassle. So they're wooden stakes. They're 3 feet long, and they're stuck in the mud. And it just rained, and the mud is soft. So this is not going to be any work. So we go out there with the cart, she and I, and this is the same place that we went yesterday, except it's 50 feet farther or 100 feet farther, whatever. And I said, whoa, and she stops. I pull up a stake and lay it on the cart. So walk up and kiss at her, and she walks up. And we do that around 2 arcs, 2 small key line swales. And since we're high on the uplands, our swales are small, which is good. But she did all that, and she was real good about it. I mean, just real good about it. She wasn't much humpbacked, I'm still letting her graze. I have an advantage with her that I don't have with Abe, which is that she's never been foundered. She's never had laminitis, and she could eat. Sydney, who I bought her from, my farrier, told me that she could safely graze 2 hours a day. Well, I don't let her graze ever. They all live on dry lot and hay because Abe has to, and nobody's getting a better deal than Abe. So, but that means that when she's working, I can let her graze, and that can be gee, this is fun. Let's put on this cart and go out here, and then I'll be able to stand around and eat grass while he does stuff, So I put things on the cart, and we lead her back. She never had to pull much weight before yet. You let them figure out they can do this before you put any weight on them at all. I can pull this cart. I could have pulled all this stuff that she has pulled. But it's more fun when she does. So today I've got a line. We used to do rotation grazing of goats and sheep here, and to a lesser extent horses and cattle. And so we have a bunch of old 1 to 3 wire electric fence paddocks, and when they're old, they're just a pain in the neck. This is all this old wire out there, and you don't use it anymore. So I'm gathering it up with donkeys and carts. It's slow work, and it's just all this crud. So today I took her to go out and gather up all the wire off one particular row that I need to pull up. And there's I don't know how long it is. It's a ways. It's from here down to over there to the property line, and there's probably 20, maybe 10 T-posts, and about 30 or 40 steel smooth electric fence posts and insulators and wire and 3 strands wire gates and things tangled up, and it's a pain in the ass. So I took a pair of wire cutters and Missy out today, and I put her on the cart. Well, in the first place, today for the first time ever, I didn't tie her up to the gate and then put the cart on her. I brought her over to where the cart was, and I stood her more or less lined up with the shafts, in front of the shafts, and dropped her lead rope on the ground. And of course, like I said, she can then graze in that spot. So she stood and grazed, and I picked the cart up, rolled it forward, and put it on her. And she did not bat an eye. Now, I don't exactly know what it is about donkeys that makes this work. Okay, this is not something I taught her. Like I said, I put it on her with her tied up 4 times, and on the 5th time, I just stand her in the barnyard and put it on her, and she puts up with that. That's because she's a donkey. That's not because I'm a trainer. And donkeys and cattle are the first animals that ever pulled our burdens, and donkeys evolved in the African desert, or their parent species is the African wild ass. So just like us, they're natives of Africa, and so of all the animals, they pretty much signed up with us first, and all the big animals, and they've been carrying our stuff for a long time, and they're genetically different than the African wild ass. It still exists, and they have literally evolved to work with us, just like dogs have. And working a donkey is not mistreating the animal. Working a donkey is actually honoring that animal's heritage, just like working myself. And I firmly believe that to not work would damage me, and I firmly believe that to not work damages a donkey. And so this is all, you just ask them to here, stand there, I'm going to put this card on you, and they say, okay, I'm going to eat some grass, So then we went down, and this is the sort of job, most of the jobs that I do on this farm, and I think most of the jobs that small landowners do on their land, is just take care of the stuff that's around, things like this. If you need the fence, you fix it, and if you don't need the fence and it's falling down and starting to get in your mowers and hang up on your steel, and there's a bunch of like crud plants that grow along it, the fence is in your way anyway, and it's supporting multiflora rows and invasive vine weeds, and so you take a donkey out. And so we go over here, we stop. By this time, like I said, today's the 5th day we've been out. So I got a pair of pliers. This time I got the sides on the cart, which means it's bigger, it's heavier, it makes more noise, the sides rattle. I don't know how many of my Abe videos you've seen, but if you look at them, the sides come off. They're just on, I put them on to haul hay. The cart is often more useful as a flatbed. But I put the sides on it because it's haying season. I'm annoyed because I cut this hay and it was supposed to be dry for 5 days. So this morning we come up a gully washer that runs for about 2 hours, and so anyway, life goes on. So I take her out. Whoa! Cut the wire. Walk to the other end of that particular little piece, and I got 2 strands, and I got insulators and crud. I mean, I don't know if you ever mess with electric fence, but there's just all these parts. And so I make her stop at the other end. Now, the only way I know to get this wire up is you just pull it up, and you can either coil it up, but that's less convenient, or you can bend it back and forth like this, just zigzag it, and get it tamed, in a kind of a hank, and at the end wrap the end around it and throw it back on the cart. And first, now this is a brand new lady donkey, and she's a kind of a nervous individual. So first, you just cut a couple of them. Okay, so that's it. We didn't have to stand long. Everything's good. So we go on a little farther, and then we stand again. And now we cut one of those, and then stand there and wind it up. And that takes, I don't know how long, 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So they have to stand a little while, And then you carry it over and gently lay it on the cart behind her, pat her on the behind, and give her a goodie, and go back over and get the other one. Do the same process, So by the time you're to about the 3rd or 4th piece of wire, you, instead of laying it in the cart, you're standing, 18 inches away from it, and you toss it in the cart, and she goes, oh! But it didn't bite her, and everything's cool, and life goes on, and you pat her on the butt, give her a goodie, and go on working. And pretty soon you can throw one in from standing by her shoulder, crash, bong, and they don't care. That's how you get a bomb-proof donkey. You know, if you just drop a few bombs around them, they learn it's okay. Um, but this made a cart that was heavier than she'd ever pulled before. In the first place, the sides have weight. And in the second place, by the time we were done, I had gathered up a lot of coils of wire. I don't know how much, but I would say probably 40 pounds, maybe 40 pounds or 50 pounds of steel wire and a couple of posts and odds and ends. And it's all on a cart. And it's uphill back to the barn. So we head off, and she says, "Boy, this is hard. I think I'll run." And I said, "Well, no, let's don't." But she wasn't real committed to running. She just kind of take a few rapid steps, and that's good because I'm hoping to drive her to town, and her willingness to face a load by just stepping into it and going is going to be extremely valuable, and I'm going to start letting her work that pretty soon. But we carried it, back up to the barnyard, and they have to walk sideways. The way you park a donkey or a horse, cart, is you drive them up parallel to the wall that you're going to go through, and then they turn. They go sideways, and they turn, and the cart pivots around its axle. This is a single axle cart, and they've got to walk sideways. And Abe doesn't like to. He will, but he doesn't like to, and it's a challenge to him. And she just does it. I mean, she's like a ballerina. She's incredible. So she walked sideways the first time I put a cart on her and asked her. Cart shafts stick up beside the animal on both sides, and they're up by their shoulders, and they can, if they turn within the shafts, they poke themselves in the shoulders with the shafts. And I'll bet Abe poked himself in the shoulders 20 times. Even after I'd gotten him to walk sideways, which keeps him from doing it. See, when they walk sideways, the shafts just go with them, and they don't get poked on either side, and it's just graceful and clean. And I mean, man, she took about, she turned into that shaft. First time I asked her to turn around from the gate, she turned into that shaft and took about a half step, started walking sideways. She's smart. So, and she's into this, she's digging this. So, that's how I train them. Now, I don't know how somebody else does it, okay? And the way I do it takes a long time. I've had these donkeys since early spring, and now, 5 days into being able to get work out of her. And but I didn't say I'd tell you how somebody else does it. So that's kind of an update on the long-term training of Miss Kitty. I appreciate y'all coming along. It's been a half an hour. Boy, I can talk a long time about nothing. Maybe see you next time. Take care.